Hey everyone, welcome to Bold Reflections. My name is Jasmine, and today we have to talk about Lila Rose's appearance on the Whatever podcast. And I want you to see the beautiful contrast that is the Christian worldview and the manosphere, red pill worldview, and also the very pro-abortion, radical feminist view, and how Christianity just delivers a better message. We're also going to talk about detransitioners, but we're going to contrast that with a story that is coming out about Texas Children's Hospital lying about their procedures on minors. All right, so let's get right into it. Okay, so we have Lila Rose on the Whatever podcast. All right, so she is talking to Justin Waller, who I'll be honest, I don't know anything about Justin Waller, but from this appearance on this podcast, what I can tell you is that he is a proud manosphere individual, a proud red pillar. That's the best way I could describe him. So Lila is challenging him on some of his views, which is the point of the podcast.
Can I ask you one more question?
Fire away, honey.
Okay. If you have only one place in your heart for one woman, or you want to have one woman in your heart, I think you said, why don't you just commit to one and choose to be faithful to her?
I'm just not wired that way. I spent my whole 20s trying to fix myself. Thought something was
You're a man
wrong
of
with me.
self-control. You work out, you do business.
Yeah.
You can possess your own power and direct it the way you want to direct it.
It's not how I am.
Do you think that might be a limited mindset?
I think it's none of your business, but I don't want you to think I'm triggered by you. I'm not.
Okay.
I saw somebody say that, and I think that's interesting. I think you're annoying, but I'm not triggered. You know what I'm saying? No, you are. You're annoying in like this goody two-shoes type way, and that's fine. I'm going to live my life on my terms, unapologetically, like truly. So you can ask me this 85 different ways. At the end of the day, I'm going to walk out of here the same man.
Just such a backwards mentality. I love how graceful she was, even though he was being very disrespectful, calling her goody two-shoes and it's none of your business. How is it none of it? Like, we're just talking about ideas. We're just talking about worldviews, and she's just challenging you. And you just caved like the really strong man that you are. You just resorted to condescension. So easily she won that argument. The messages to men from these influencers tend to be discipline yourself, stay away from women who are promiscuous, go for the virgin, but don't get married because marriage is risky and it's really bad, and some of these women are trifling, so stay away from marriage. Also, work out, make money, be a top 1% earner. That's the message. It's to seek money, have sex with whoever you want because you're a hot guy, and don't get married and don't have kids. This is somebody who has a warped worldview because of the warped worldview of radical feminism that is prominent in our culture, that says women can just be slutty and do whatever they want, and the courts favor women, so therefore don't get married, stay away from these loose women, but also have sex with them, but don't marry them, don't have kids with them. It's really missing the point of the Christian worldview, which is that men and women are equal. The woman is partnered with the man to help him, to assist him. And here's the thing about the Christian worldview that gets mischaracterized is that women must submit to the man, and women must be sexually oppressed, or whatever the narrative is. I don't know. But, and men, they can just have multiple wives. There's a clip of Pearly Things that came out where she's like, didn't Solomon have like 1,000,000 wives? Girl, you're missing the point. All these red pill influencers are missing the point. The point is the family structure, because that is the building block of civilization. Why is Satan so adamant about destroying the nuclear family? And it's always when we see governments that want to take the place of God, for example, communism, there tends to be a very real effort to destroy the family. Like the red pill community is an overreaction to the radical feminism. And it just, both of these worldviews twist the actual design for humanity. And this is why they're both missing the point. So Lila is talking to a former female pastor turned OnlyFans, can we just say it, prostitute? Because that's what's going on here. Who, during this 4-hour conversation, mentioned about her teenage sons not caring about what she does now, and how monogamy is just trash and blah blah blah, and she's just fueled by her sexuality and proud of it. She's talking to this woman and they get on the subject of abortion, and I want you to see how, once again, just like the red pill guy, the argument is so weak that the response is just childish. So check this out.
There are
Tom, there's
2,500
all
babies
kinds of
killed
things.
every day in this country because they were unwanted, because people had sex that weren't ready to be parents with people they didn't want to actually be with.
People have used contraception and it's failed. It's not because they
That's
weren't.
the point.
So they have to have
Exactly.
options. To, if they don't want the baby, they do everything in their power to not have to have it. If that's their choice.
But why should children have to die because adults just want to live
They're
out
just
sexual
cells
desires?
before they're born as a baby.
You're just cells right now.
Okay, cool.
What?
But you have a right to live, and the child has a right to live in the womb.
Sure.
Do you guys want to continue that discussion?
No, it's old. It's done. No,
Well,
I'm happy to.
not interested.
Wow. Oh my God. Like, no, not interested. And Lila's like, yeah, I'd love to keep talking about this because the facts are on her side all day, every day. And that's kind of the other side of the pendulum, is that because you view yourself as God and your desires as God, you can destroy lives in the process. On one end, you have, at least in the context of these clips that I showed you, you have the woman who's like, well, you know, I don't have to have a baby. I'm God. I swear this microphone. Every video, every single video. Anyway, so you have this red pill guy. So you have this woman who has elevated herself into the position of God. So she can define morality, and it's okay to take an image bearer in the womb and label them a clump of cells because that's her definition. She gets to set the rules here according to her worldview. I want to screw whoever I want, and if a baby comes along, well, it's just a clump of cells because I made up the definition. It's not based on science. It's not based on morality. It's just my morality, my truth. So another human has to pay the price. And with the other clip we saw here with this red pill fellow, and it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing where it doesn't matter if my family gets destroyed. It doesn't matter if my children are hurt by my inability, or perhaps not inability, unwillingness to control my sexual desires. So I get to sleep with whoever I want. Women should be virgins because you don't want to be like that lady, right? And when you're challenged with it, you just resort to name calling or like childishness. Like, I'm not interested in discussing this. And on the topic of abortion, there is a story that is coming out where a Colorado abortionist sits down with the Atlantic and just kind of tells his side of the story. But we're not going to get into all of that because obviously this is a person who is so ingrained in darkness that really the only way out is to turn away completely, come to Christ, repent of all of the wickedness that they've engaged in. The murder of probably at this point thousands of lives, because he's been in the game for 50 years. So just imagine how many lives he's taken. And he admits to the Atlantic, look at this, most late-term abortions he performs involve healthy babies and moms. Now, in our culture, we are seeing rhetoric and even attempts to change policy. And honestly, I don't know if the policy already exists in some areas where it's okay to murder the baby all the way up until the day before it's born, all the way up to the moment of birth. That human can be aborted on the whims of the mother, which is wicked, which is evil. So he even admits he's killed a baby girl simply because she was a girl. Could you imagine that? There's some screenshots from the conversation from the article that I want you to see. So Hearn is now nearing his 5th decade of practice at Boulder Clinic. And he specializes in late-term abortions. This means that Hearn ends the pregnancies of women who are 20, 25, and even 30 weeks along. Although 14 states now ban abortion in most or all circumstances, Colorado has no gestational limits on the procedure. Okay, so that just answered my question. Yes, there are states that will allow this all the way until the moment of birth because they say no gestational limits. So you could be 37 weeks, 38 weeks, 39 weeks. That's insane to me. That's so insane. Patients come to him from all over the country because he is one of only a handful of physicians who can and will perform abortions so late. So his morality compass is so broken that he is like the beacon of darkness for people who are just willing to engage in this type of evil. Hearn had told me about a woman who sought an abortion because she didn't want to have a baby girl. So this is what I mentioned earlier. I thought he had refused, but when I followed up to ask him why, Hearn said he had done abortions for sex selection twice. 2 lives taken just because they were not the right sex. So if a pregnant woman with no health issues comes to the clinic, say at 30 weeks, what would you do? I asked Hearn once. The question irked him. Of course, because shining light on demons is just, it makes them angry. Every pregnancy is a health issue. There's a certifiable risk of death from being pregnant, period. Even though the process of birth and pregnancy is the most natural process that a woman goes through, other than like her menstruation, because there's a risk of death. We have to definitely kill the child because the mom wants to. It's a health issue to be pregnant. Gosh, that's just so evil. I can't even. There is more that this abortionist admits to. He says he had bad dreams in the 1970s. Physicians did not induce fetal demise during abortion, and once or twice during a procedure at 15 or 16 weeks, he used forceps to remove a fetus with a still beating heart. The heart thumped only for a few seconds before stopping, but for a long while after, a vision of that fetus would wake Hearn from his sleep. So at some point in his career, his conscience was warning him, screaming at him, I should say, that what he did was evil. It haunted him, but you can suppress your conscience. And so he did, and that's why he continued. He goes on to say in his dreams, he could see it in his mind, the inches-long body and its heart, beating, beating, beating. In one dream, Hearn angled his own body to shield his staff from catching a glimpse. Isn't that wicked? Isn't that insane? That in his dreams, he knows the truth. Wow, I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless. All right, here we go on to see. But abortions come after devastating Abortions that come after devastating medical diagnosis can be easier for some people to understand, but Hearn estimates, listen to this, that at least half and sometimes more of the women who come to the clinic, so not just in general, but that come to the clinic that he works in, do not have these diagnoses. He and his staff are just as sympathetic to other circumstances. So all this rhetoric that you will see in the pro-choice, pro-life debate that this is dangerous to women and that they reserve the right to health care, I put that in quotes because they're really talking about murdering their child. So where's the health care for the child? But it doesn't matter to this doctor. And it doesn't matter to a lot of the other doctors that are performing abortions around the country, because they're putting really, this is about money and possibly about their ideological darkness or the demons that are oppressing them, to want death and to want money over morality. So evil personified, and the medical establishment that engages in this level of wickedness. I did a video the other day talking about the Nuremberg Code and how the doctors today, and I'm not going to say all doctors, okay, you know that in the context of abortion and transgenderism, that's what I'm talking about. And the doctors that took the phrase "do no harm" and just threw it in the trash, burned it in the fire. That's who I'm talking about. So I talked about how they are violating the Nuremberg Code, specifically in that regard for transgenderism. But here it's happening too in the abortion industry. But let's get back to the transgenderism, because guess what? It's still happening at Texas Children's Hospital. They actually announced that they would be stopping gender affirming care on minors. But here we see an investigative journalist named Christopher Rufo has obtained internal records indicating that this hospital secretly restarted its child sex change program 3 days later. So did they announce that they were restarting it? No, they did not. And here are some screenshots. The ones that I want you to see are these. And essentially, this is the physician. And then there's, in their internal systems, their database, they have right here, gender identity. Okay, here's a better. Medicine refill, gender identity. Testosterone levels, gender identity. This must be maybe a consultation and medication. But look at the ages, 15, 16, 13. You have a 17 and 18-year-old here, and then you have 14. So this goes to show you, and this was not the only doctor. This goes on to say, despite the hospital statement that it had ceased these practices, Roberts has continued to manage a heavy caseload for gender-affirming care. So it's not just like one-off, right? Well, let's just sneak these 2 kids in. Just these 2 or 3. No. Multiple patient visits in a single day last week for gender dysphoria and gender identity, and another for HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy. So that's a snippet of one day and one provider. How much money are these people making? I've heard a statistic that it's in the billions that this industry is making off of these kids and their gender dysphoria, which is totally evil. And like I've argued before, violates the Nuremberg Code. They should be put on trial just like those Nazi doctors were. 100%. Here's another physician, another Texas children's doctor, Harvard-trained surgeon, Christy Rylon, inserted and removed non-biodegradable drug delivery implants for gender dysphoria in pediatric patients throughout 2022 and 2023, including the puberty blocker Supralin on, get this, 11 to 15-year-old kids. And then there's screenshots here, which we don't need to see all of them. You get the idea. And then they had this personal testimony of a transgender child that they removed from their website with that whole message of, would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son, to justify to the parents who are rightfully concerned at times. They kind of guilt trip and manipulate your emotions to be able to get the parents to consent to these procedures. And of course, there's an inherent trust that we still give doctors because they are doctors, because they are educated, because they have supposedly taken the Hippocratic Oath. So we trust them. But what are they doing instead? Some of these doctors are manipulating these parents' emotions, terrifying them that their children may commit suicide, so just go along with it. Have your children get on hormone replacement therapy. It's okay for them to chop off their breasts and get phalloplasties and vaginoplasties. It's totally okay, because we're going to make some serious cash, and you totally won't lose your child to suicide, even though, honestly, as we will see, there's a lot of detransitioners that say otherwise. So let's jump into that story. We have another article, and it's pretty long, but I did want to show you this part right here. Transgender activists and the media will often give people this rate right here, less than 1% rate. And this rate is referring to the number of transgender people that will go on to have medical interventions, whether that's through hormones or through surgery, that go on to become detransitioners. They will say, well, it's only 1%. What are we talking about? This is an itty bitty number. But it's starting to look like it can actually be as high as 30% in some instances. That it's much larger than this 1% nonsense. All right, so this article has 20 testimonies of detransitioners, and I'm just going to go through. Let's just look at the top 3. Let's look at the first 3 that they put on this list. Daisy Strongen spent 7 years from age 15 to 22 attempting to transition from female to male. It began when she immersed herself on the internet due to depression and low self-esteem. Chances are the kid who is spending 14 hours a day on the internet probably doesn't have a lot of in real life friends, so they probably feel alienated. I mean, that's how I felt. She soon discovered a world of gender queer and gender fluidity on social media sites and began following trans influencers. Strongen began getting testosterone injections and eventually underwent a double mastectomy. Soon, however, she began feeling remorse for her decision. It just got so hard to look in the mirror because I felt more of a disconnect between my mind and my body than I did before. I felt like I was in some weird gender purgatory. She now rejects gender theory and gender identity, calling it a scam. And now she is 24, newly married, and has an infant son. So I'm glad she was able to turn her life around, but the reality is she can't breastfeed. So she's missing out. Not that breastfeeding is the, only essence of motherhood, but she didn't even get that choice because she, as a very young girl, was led into these procedures that ended up being the removal of both of her breasts. All right, then we have Casey Miller, who began taking testosterone at 16 years old and underwent a double mastectomy only 6 months after starting injections. So there's this idea here, right? There's this idea that there's a long and really intensive counseling process, mental health evaluation process in order to get to the more intrusive and permanent procedures. Not for Casey. Casey was 16 when she started her injections and within 6 months was already having a breast removed. She says that she was introduced to gender ideology through influencers on YouTube. After noticing that testosterone treatments were causing severe hair loss, she started to detransition and now admits that a social contagion played a role in convincing her to transition. Funny about these influencers reaching people at such a young age. This is a testament to the dangers of social media at an early age. It's very dangerous. That's why I encourage anyone watching, do what I'm doing. Turn a camera on. Speak out against this evil. Post it on YouTube. Why? Because the other side does not hesitate to do that. And they are reaching people. They're reaching vulnerable young women who are depressed and lonely and convincing them that there's something wrong with them, and they believe it. We need to put a better message out there as Christians. Then there's a story of Chloe Cole, which, man, her story is wild. I'll probably dedicate a video at some point to Chloe Cole's story, but she went on puberty blockers and testosterone at just 13 years old. She'd been diagnosed with autism. By the way, they're starting to discover a link between autism and gender dysphoria, and ADHD at age 7, and spent a lot of unsupervised time online where she was exposed to gender ideology. When she began questioning her gender identity, she was fast-tracked. Another person saying, I was fast-tracked by medical personnel into transitioning, and her parents were pressured to sign off on it. So just like we saw in the Texas Children's Hospital, what I was talking about, where they are profiting, they just want to get more and more people because they're profiting off of this. Where you saw 13, 14, 15-year-olds. She underwent a double mastectomy at 13 and still suffers medical complications to this day, 5 years later. She came to regret her decision and now is a spokesperson to advocate for protecting children from undergoing transitioning procedures, and now has a group for detransitioners called Detrans United. This girl is incredible, and it's really, really sad that she had to be victimized by these disgusting doctors. Another one, let's read one more. We have Helena Kirschner, who struggled with depression, isolation, self-harm, and eating disorder and suicidal thoughts as a young teen. At 13, she was exposed to gender ideology through Tumblr. Again, social media at a young age. All of these stories have that in common. At 18, she began taking testosterone and soon began having fits. This is interesting. Fits of uncontrollable anger, and eventually resorting to a psych unit where she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and psychosis. 17 months later, she decided to stop taking testosterone, and her symptoms immediately stopped. Kirschner noted that no medical professional suggested that the hormones could be causing the symptoms. And I've watched an interview with this woman before, but she talks about what it was like to be on these medications. There was elements of hyper rage, hyper sexual drive, and she couldn't control it, and it was ruining her life. So all of these doctors, right, that we were talking about, all of these doctors here, these evil doctors are perpetuating this further. They're getting these kids on these testosterones, fast tracking them because it's financially expedient for them. And these teenagers who are lonely, depressed, want to kill themselves are being told by trusted medical professionals that here's the solution to your problems. And it only makes it so much worse. So as Christians, here's my message to Christians. This world is way worse than you might realize. Our children need us. If you are a millennial now, if you are a Gen Xer, if you are a boomer, we need you to tell the truth. We need you to, yes, be courageous. Wake people up, because this is really serious and it's leading people to becoming more depressed, becoming more suicidal, and going down dark, dark paths into transgenderism, into abortion, into hypersexuality, destruction of families. And we need, just like Lila Rose, to gracefully, in love, show people the light. All right, guys, if you didn't catch my video discussing the SatanCon 2023, that was my last video. I'm going to link it right here, right here. Again, I'm just going to do away with the pointing. It'll be on the cell phone graphic. All right. So, and also I have an interview coming up with It's Your Girl Sang. Very excited for that. That will be coming out later this week. So be on the lookout for that. And as always, God bless.